Welcome back everyone to our studies in constitutional and administrative law. In this video we're actually moving on finally to the substantive content of the SQE specification, looking at the first part of the specification, that being Parliament and parliamentary sovereignty. Now we're going to spend a good amount of time talking about Parliament and parliamentary sovereignty. There are a lot of specific details that some of the textbooks refer to, that the specification refers to, and that I've seen some exam questions look at, exploring the nature of Parliament and some of its key institutions. So this lesson will take an overview to the idea of Parliament, an introduction to Parliament. We'll spend some time in the future videos talking about the idea of parliamentary sessions, the legislative process, the impact of the Parliament Acts as a sort of way of examining the relationship between the bicameral institutions of Parliament, the House of Commons and the House of Lords, before then diving headfirst into the doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty, what is, in my opinion, the most important constitutional principle that we have. So with all that being said then, we are spending the next few lessons looking at the legislative branch of the Westminster Parliament, of the UK Constitution, should I say, the Westminster Parliament. We'll take an introduction to this in this video. So, fundamentally then, we speak about Parliament and we talk about the legislature and we talk about the idea of the separation of powers and all these different kinds of things. But what actually is Parliament? Well, Parliament, in terms of its structure, is comprised of three distinct parts. The first is the monarchy. The second, which is, of course, King Charles III, and serves as the ceremonial head of state. He has technically a formal role in Parliament in the sense that he opens sessions. He also prorogues Parliament. He dissolves Parliament and calls Parliament. So that's what we have here. We also have, of course, giving royal assent to bills and also the appointment of the Prime Minister from Parliament. There's also a role that the monarch provides. The next key part of Parliament is, of course, the House of Commons. The House of Commons is comprised of 650 members of Parliament, abbreviated to MPs. They serve each in a single member constituency. So there are 650 members of Parliament. There are also 650 constituencies. The UK is divided into roughly equal 650 slices, equal not by geographical size, equal by representation of people. I believe it's roughly about, I think in the US, the districts are roughly 70,000 people. I believe in the UK, it's a few tens of thousands of people. And the aim is to try and have MPs represent roughly the same amount of people. So you might have really rural areas where there are quite a lot less MPs than you might find in an urban dense environment like London, for example. House of Commons is the primary legislative chamber. They are the ones that passes laws. Those laws then go over to the House of Lords. The House of Lords is the unelected chamber of Parliament. They are members who are known as peers, and they are not, in fact, elected. They are, in fact, appointed by the government. They are appointed by the Prime Minister. They are made up of people who are life peers, so as soon as they are appointed to the House of Lords, they are a member of the House of Lords for life. There is a diminishing group of what are known as hereditary peers. So the hereditary peers were a quite old and archaic system whereby you inherit membership to the House of Lords by reference to your title of your family. So the man of the house in some kind of aristocratic background, when they died, their son would inherit the position of the House of Lords. A very archaic, a very undemocratic system in an already undemocratic institution like the House of Lords. And so that has, of course, been diminishing very much since the House of Lords Act in the late 1990s under the new Labour government reduces that number down to, I believe, 72 hereditary peers, and I believe that number has even been reduced further subsequently. And you also have Lords Spiritual. This includes historically and prominently members of the Anglican Church, so different people who were in high-ranking positions there. But it also involves other religious faiths now, so imams in Islam and also rabbis in Judaism are also included in that list as well. So what is the role of Parliament? This is the structure of Parliament. What, in fact, is the role of Parliament? Well, the first is this idea of scrutiny. They will essentially go through the process of scrutinizing legislation that is made and is passed in law. So bills will go through multiple different detailed stages where they will have a lot of time for debate and a lot of time for scrutinizing that legislation to make sure it is actually up to scratch. We'll get to this in more detail when we look at the legislative process in a few videos' time. Amendments are then made to the legislation, which can then be scrutinized itself and can essentially go through a process of improving legislation. Parliament also examines policy. So bills are scrutinized through various different select committees. And then finally, the scrutinization process can also be applied to that of government. They hold the government to account. They raise debates, they press ministers, they propose revisions to bills. Every single minister has their own allocated slot for ministers' questions, where they have to be in Parliament. And they are challenged on their policy decisions by the shadow minister, the people, the shadow secretary of whatever institution that may be, who of course form the opposition, but also by backbench MPs, by MPs who wish to raise a question of that particular nature, whether it be in terms of environmental policy, defence policy, foreign policy, the economic policy, whatever it may be. The most publicly televised and the most intensive of these debates is, of course, Prime Minister's Questions, which happens every single Wednesday at noon and involves people putting questions to the Prime Minister, to the head of the government. The Prime Minister's Questions, PMQs, are largely a lot more ceremonial. They're largely a lot more non-committal. They tend not to answer the questions very much. I stopped watching PMQs many years ago for simply that reason. The more minor ministers and their questions tend to be a little bit more detailed, because they tend to, of course, be focused on specific areas of policy and not just broad concepts and broad ideas and political concepts that are raised in PMQs.